about it, I'll be talking about it. Dennis Prager here. Join me this morning at 11, right here on AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy, in February of 2016, New York police officer Peter Liang was convicted of manslaughter for ricochet shooting of a black man.
Oh.
Jury in Brooklyn found Liang guilty in connection with the death of a 28-year-old black man who was killed by a bullet fired from Liang's gun in November of 2014. Liang, the New York police officer, testified that a sudden noise startled him, causing his finger to slip onto the trigger and fire the gun, and it ricocheted off a wall and hit the victim.
Now that's weird because Kate Steinle's murderer, he, accidentally pulled the trigger. It ricocheted off the ground 80 feet into her back and killed her. Involuntary manslaughter for me if I was a juror, but he got off on that charge.
Yeah, it's interesting to compare and contrast, isn't it? Now, it should be noted that Liang's conviction was ultimately reduced to criminally negligent homicide. He didn't serve any jail time, was not sentenced to any jail time.
I'm sure he lost his job.
But that's secondary. Secondary is that's the sentencing is secondary to the conviction, and then we can argue about the sentencing. But here in this case, I would argue we have jury nullification based on the politics of immigration policy. And speaking of the politics of immigration policy, of course, this matters in the state of Illinois, which is a sanctuary state, and the county of Cook, which is a sanctuary county, and the city of Chicago, which is a sanctuary city. And we have a number of cases here where families have been victimized by people in this country illegally, and justice has yet to be served. We mentioned the Tiffany Thrasher case in Schaumburg on Friday, and that the individual responsible for her murder is, I believe, awaiting trial. And then we also have the case of Dennis McCann. Dennis McCann was killed in Chicago by an illegal immigrant who subsequently fled after arrest because he was able to post bail.
It was a hit and run on Kinsey Avenue.
Right. And we've spoken to his brother, Brian McCann, who before, and Brian McCann joins us again now. Brian, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here.
So, I know you and some other family members from families who've been victimized by illegal immigrant criminals have started an organization, and I wonder what the discussion was among you and similar situated people when that Steinle verdict came down last week.
Yeah, well, as you can imagine, the phones were ringing and the emails were in process all weekend with my other AVIAC members, advocates for victims of illegal alien crime. And what we're going to try to do is pivot off of this, and hopefully it will be seared into the consciousness of John and Mary Q. Public. That's been our lament over the years, is that most Americans are sort of indifferent, perhaps even uncaring, certainly not aware of how serious illegal alien crime is. So we're going to ratchet up our cause. We're going to try to raise a few bucks and do some more traveling, and we thank you for inviting me, and other people are doing radio shows this morning as well.
Brian, for those of us who aren't familiar, maybe they missed out the first time we had you on, or they didn't read John Cass's column. Your brother was hit by Saul Chavez, who was on just explain what happened that day.
Yeah, it was June 6, 2011. My brother was calling on a client at a Mexican restaurant. He used to insure, he's a commercial insurance guy. As he was crossing Kedzie Avenue, not far from that famous monument up there, Chavez was seriously inebriated and hit him and dragged him about a city block, and my brother died a violent death. A Good Samaritan, off-duty cop, apprehended him, and Chavez was brought in. He was arraigned, and we were assured by the Cook County prosecutor that not to worry about bail because of something called a detainer, which was explained to us at the time, so we were somewhat comforted that he would receive justice. Little did we know that soon to be the next congressman, Chuy Garcia, was working tirelessly with Preckwinkle to fashion an ordinance to make the county sanctuary which it did in September of 2011. And Mr. Chavez's brother posted the necessary $25,000 in cash, I might add. And Chavez fled, and he's alive and well, driving a truck in Mexico.
And so I remember when we talked to you about the sanctuary state legislation to codify this policy that the city and the county adopted at the state level. You and other families who've been victimized wanted to speak to the governor about it before he made his decision, ultimately, which was to sign it. And the governor had publicly promised you, or I think he had promised you, that he would speak to you. And I wonder if that conversation ever happened.
Never did. He promised us in front of about, 20 million people on Fox News that night. Brett Baer was in town.
That's right.
And so I thought, well, that should offer some leverage. But no, he never reached out to us. He did say he talks to lots of families, but we suspect he talked more to families from the other side than from us. Judicial Watch, by the way, is trying to sue for documents on that. I don't know if they'll ever get anywhere.
No, but
they're trying.
So, in addition, and the interesting thing about this, you suggest that you're trying to get kind of families to pay attention to this, residents of Illinois to get animated by this, and other states for that matter. And, when you look at the survey research, people wildly oppose this. I mean, Republicans and Democrats, this is like 3-1 against this policy. So people kind of viscerally get it. It may not be the thing that, animates them if they or someone they know hasn't been victimized, but they certainly get the logic of your position. And I wonder now if this is a time, because of that Steinle verdict, to try to focus people's attention on their legislators and put pressure on them to consider a repeal of the legislation Governor Rauner signed.
Well, I talked to a young lady the other day. She's campaign manager, I guess, for Jeannie Ives. I think she's going to be on with you later this morning, I think.
Right.
Kathleen told me, yeah. So she wants me to join her on the steps of the jail Thursday, I think. I look at my notes. I guess she wants to announce a repeal effort if she's elected governor. So I certainly support that. Now, out in California, Don Rosenberg, who's part of our organization, he's raising money to try to do a ballot initiative. I don't think we can do ballot initiatives here, but
not as easily, right?
He's going to try and do it out there. So lots of luck for Don. But that could generate a lot of buzz too, because California's got more issues related to this than we do.
But you must feel betrayed by Governor Rauner. I mean, the fact that he didn't call you, said on national TV that he would call you, and then now we're a sanctuary state.
I'm an old student of political science. I understand. Ironically, I was kind of pleased with what happened. Aside from immigration issues, I'm a big proponent of vouchers, in spite of the fact that I'm a retired public school teacher. And when he slipped that tax credit voucher thing in there, I privately was pretty pleased with him. So, it's mixed. Politics is mixed. You never get what you want. But sure, betrayed, I don't know. I don't know how to respond. I'm a realist. I'm a realist.
Yeah, you're used to Illinois and Chicago politics, which is to say you're used to being
been
betrayed.
Around this town for so long,
Would you just keep your expectations low? But I mean, your brother is gone. He's not coming back, and his killer is still alive in Mexico. Do you ever just want to go down there and have some street justice?
Yeah. Well, we're going to start a posse. How's that?
Yeah.
I remember I'm 7 years old. I remember the Westerns. We always wanted to start posses when we were kids. Maybe I'll start one. You want to join?
Yeah.
I'll be the Swedish member of your posse.
Yeah, we'll get the Wild Bunch together. Yeah.
Pancho Villa, horseback, and we'll have a good time.
Yeah. Do you speak with other families? I know you mentioned your friend in California. What about other families in Illinois that are similar situations?
I can send you the number. Eric Brady lost his wife Janine New Year's Eve down in Champaign, of all places. Champaign went sanctuary some years ago, and Janine was worked at the American Legion. Her husband's a veteran. And she was driving home New Year's Eve on Interstate, what is it, 70, 74 down there. I think it's 74. She was going home, and this kid from Guatemala was on the wrong side of the interstate and hit her head on and killed her instantly. The Guatemalan was rushed to the hospital because he had injuries, and the stupid Illinois State Police didn't assign a deputy to keep an eye on him, so they released him that morning, and he fled to Guatemala.
Oh, my God.
I've had radio stations down in St. Louis talk to Eric. You guys ought to talk to him. It's unbelievably tragic, very recent.
And here's the thing about this, too. I just get your perspective. I mean, mine on this is I'm a pro-legal immigration guy, but it seems to me that all the politicians say, and the Steinle case is such a poignant reminder of this. Oh, hey, yeah, people that are here that have committed violent crimes, obviously they have to be deported. And yet they're not, and they're deported, and they're deported, and they re-enter time and time again, and then they find safe haven in cities like San Francisco or Chicago, and so it's very difficult to have a thoughtful conversation about how we govern legal immigration in this country when politicians across the political spectrum can't keep that sort of foundational promise to expel violent individuals who shouldn't be in this country in the first place.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. And how are we going to resolve this? God only knows. The Democratic Party, these progressives that run these cities, they're a different breed. They're a different coalition. They're not the Roosevelt Democrats that my mother and father and my wife's family was. It's not real pro-labor. You know, I'm Irish. We wanted to run the cities. But we didn't want criminals. I don't know. We didn't want to protect criminals, and we didn't want to protect alternative marriage schemes and all sorts of other. It's a different world out there, and somehow we have to punch through it and get people in Middle America to appreciate it. I've seen that data you mentioned, Dan. But boy, when you're talking to the average man on the street, they think Case Steinle was an outlier. It was an isolated case. They really don't realize how serious this crime situation is. It's impossible to aggregate data because of sanctuary cities. I mean, we get
yeah,
data
right. Well, good point.
from ICE, but we really don't know. We're trying to do it on our own, and there's been well over 200 murders, killings in the last 12 years. These are some of our early figures, not to mention assaults, rapes, identity theft, you name it, all felonies. The public has got to get it, and we're praying and hoping that we can pivot off of this Steinle thing and maybe change a few minds and get this repeal effort underway. And I'll talk to Miss Ives later this week, and hopefully I can help her.
All right, Brian. Well, we appreciate you raising the profile on the issue. He is Brian McCann, Advocates for Victims of Illegal Alien Crime. How do you pronounce the acronym?
Aviac.us is the website.
Aviac.us.
And we have a button, and we need some money, so please help.
Aviac.us is the website.
Aviac.us is the website.
He is Brian McCann. Brian, thanks so much for joining us.
You
Appreciate
bet,
it.
you guys. Have a good day. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Brian. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.